What's going on, family? It's your boy Brandon here, back with another video. Today, we're going to be talking about accountability and accountability versus consequences. And see, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today was because there's just been a lot of discourse going on online about um, this back and forth between men and women, where men will say, "Oh, you know, women lack accountability. They never take accountability." And I've seen this on so many YouTube videos, on so many TikTok posts, on so many XYZ like Instagram posts, you know, and all the women, say the same thing about the men, that men don't take accountability when they cheat. They all lie. They all do X, Y, and Z. And I kind of want to just set the record straight. And I will say this at the very beginning of this video and then prove it with biblical context. I'm saying, I postulate that men and women don't really have an accountability issue. What exists in the world today is a displeasure in dealing with the consequences of one's own bad decisions. And this is something that's been prevalent since the beginning of time, and we'll go into that, dealing with the first man and women, Adam and Eve. We're going to talk about that, and yeah, with that, let's just jump straight into it. So I got some definitions here. So we're going to start with accountability. Accountability is defined as an internal, proactive mindset of owning decisions and outcomes that foster growth and repair, while consequences are external, reactive results that are positive or negative that follow actions, and while essential for enforcing accountability, can sometimes be punitive punishments that fail to change behavior. So with this, when I hear this, accountability is focusing on changing and correcting behavior, while consequences are pretty much a outcome of an action, of a decision. And that can, it may change your behavior, it may not change your behavior. But most people do not want to deal with consequences of their of their bad decisions. And this is natural. But when it comes to accountability, accountability is an important facet of being a great leader. And I'm going to do a video on leadership at some point. But if you're going to be a leader in any kind of context, you need to learn how to take accountability, whether you're a man or a woman. So let's get into some biblical context. So Genesis chapter 3 discusses the fall of man, and in this story, we have Adam and Eve. They were sitting in the Garden of Eden, and the serpent comes up to them and tells Eve, who's sitting next to Adam, that she will not die. And this is not to mean death of the physical nature, but death of the spiritual nature, being separated from God. They will not die if they eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God told them they can eat of any fruit, or any all the fruit of all the other trees in the garden, but that one, or those, there's two, I think there was one tree they could not eat of. And the serpent comes up and tells Eve, well, no, you're not going to die. God just knows that if you eat this fruit, you will be like him, right? And Adam, he's sitting here the whole time, right? He doesn't even try to correct Eve or stop Eve, or even, like, shoo the serpent away or anything like that. He's there, he's hearing this, and he allows Eve to be tempted by the serpent, and she eats the fruit, and then Eve gives some to Adam, who is like I said, is with her. So we're going to read this. So it says, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that, this is King James Version, God doth know that uh, in the day that ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. So the important thing to note here is that Eve was first tempted by the serpent into eating the fruit, right? And she gave it to her husband, who was also with her, thereby indicating that the man that was with her was also tempted into eating this fruit. When I think about this temptation, right? Temptation is not a choice necessarily, right? You don't necessarily get tempted into or you don't make a choice to be tempted. Tempting is something that just happens, and there's a weakness that exists inside of you. Like, let's say your weakness is lust, and you're a guy and you see a beautiful woman middle of summer walking down the street. You're going to be tempted to look, right? I mean, you may look, but the temptation is a play on your weakness. But what happens after that is your choice, right? You have a choice to sin or to not sin. And James chapter 1, verses 14 through 16 tells us that each person is tempted when they are dragged by their own evil desires and enticed. And after desire has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished or fully grown, it brings forth death. So, desire or temptation, they're the same kind of wordplay here. So, what it's saying is that once you're tempted, right? Eve was tempted. She ate the fruit, which was a direct violation to God's instructions, which is the sin. The sin is the violation of God's own instruction. So, when she ate it, she sinned against God. And then when she gave Adam the fruit, he was also tempted and ate it and sinned against God. The point I'm trying to get at here is that both men and women are capable or are fully capable of being tempted and therefore falling into sin, right? And we're going to talk about what sin is in a minute, but that is the essence of this argument, is that both of them, both men and women, follow or are subject to the same rules, the same laws of this world, because we're all created in the image of God and we're all humans. And so if we all have the same capacity to be tempted, then we all have the same capacity to commit sin. So sin is described as a transgression against the law of God and rebellion against God, basically disobeying any of God's instructions, direct instructions, right? It's any action that would draw you naturally away from God. So when you think about it, you have your seven deadly sins, right? Lust, greed, pride, envy, wrath. I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head, but the pride. And you have other ones like in the Ten Commandments. You have adultery, murder, thievery, covetousness. All these different things fall under the umbrella of sin, right? So part of the negative opinions that I've been seeing going around online is that all men are cheaters and all women are liars, and but the thing I want us all to like think about is that if temptation leads to sin, and sin encompasses all of those things that I just mentioned, and we've established before that both men and women have the same capacity to be tempted and the same capacity to fall into sin. Why is it that we believe that one party is more uh, capable of falling into one type of sin versus the other? Because all the sin is the same to God. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's all the same. Whether no matter if we as human beings consider it a small thing, or if God considers, or if we consider it a big thing, to God it's all the same. So my line here is that one party, like, you can't say that one party is more likely to only hold themselves accountable and more likely to not be held accountable, when everybody, men and women, are capable of committing the same sin once they are tempted. They are capable of being tempted because they are capable. We all live in the same world. We all are governed by the same rule set. So I'm going to provide an example of accountability and the lack thereof from the guidance of parenting. And from here, I reassert my notion that men and women don't necessarily have an accountability issue. In fact, I believe that men and women have a very easy time taking accountability. But we have a easy time taking accountability when the outcome of a choice or the consequence of a choice is good. So when it comes to raising children, whether you're a single mom, single dad, or you're in a two-parent household, when a child has done well throughout most of their lives, like they're a grade A student, D1 athlete, they're like they got a full ride scholarship to the school or whatever, they've like done something great with their lives. A parent is more than likely going to say, I knew I raised that child right. Look at the good work I've done in that child. Basically, taking accountability for how well that they've raised that child, or taking accountability for the position in life that that child has reached, right? And they should, because they're the parents. It was their responsibility to raise that child. And I mean, it's not they shouldn't take full accountability because the child is their own person. They have their own minds and their own capacity for thinking once they get of age. But parents should take some accountability for the good that their child has done. However, when a child grows up to become a rapist or a serial killer or even a school shooter, you know anything that we deem as a society to be bad, pretty much, most parents aren't going to take accountability for that. Most of the time what you'll hear is, I don't know where we went wrong. That could be seen as kind of an accountability statement, but not really accepting, you know, full ownership of it, which, again, you don't necessarily need to. But a lot of times, parents will also shift the blame of the child's mishaps onto something else, whether it be video games or their circle of friends, or like, just them in general misbehaving. But these phrases right here, they show an overall lack of accountability on the parent side, because the parents ultimately still have to hold responsibility over that child. And they don't want to believe that they've done anything that could have led to the child's uh, decision to do these horrific acts. And I'm not saying that, as a parent, right, you didn't do the best that you could, or, a parent wouldn't do the best that they can to raise that child. But what I'm saying is that in most of these cases, there was something that was fundamentally missing in the home that caused that created a spark for that child to go down these bad pathways, right? And I'm not saying that just because a child comes from a chaotic household that they're always going to be doing something bad, right? Sometimes children do act out because of this, right? And sometimes parents don't even have the emotional capacity to provide, everything for that child, because they're worried about making ends meet, or um worried about their own mental health. If they're going through a chaotic time with their spouse, or with their parents, or with their own parents, or with their friends, or work, or what have you, you know, it's a lot of nuance that goes into this. But the point I'm trying to make is that when the outcome of a situation, or the consequence of a situation, is negative, people will more than likely shift blame onto something else, versus taking full ownership of it. Versus when it's good, people are very quick to take full ownership of it. And it's just the difference between a good and bad consequence. And part of the reason why we as people don't like to take accountability for our bad choices is because we all have egos, right? The larger your ego is, the more likely you are to run away from the consequences of your bad choices, right? So when Adam ate the fruit, the first thing that he did was blame Eve for giving him the fruit. He said in verse 12 of chapter 3, Genesis 3, chapter 12, Genesis chapter 3, verse 12, it says, and the man said, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave She gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that thou hast done?" And the woman said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." So it's very clear that not only did Adam try to shift blame onto Eve for giving him the fruit to eat, but Eve then tried to shift blame onto the serpent for tempting him or tempting her into eating the fruit. And God just ended up punishing all three of them, right? Because punishing Adam because he sinned and listened to his wife in order to fall into sin, Eve because she listened to the serpent and fell into temptation and sin from that, and then the serpent for coming up and tempting both of them to eat the fruit. The bottom line here is that both men and women make bad choices, especially when it comes to maneuvering around with the opposite sex. But instead of accepting the consequences of our bad choices, we would rather shift blame onto the other party that's involved. Women who go online and say that they hate men don't really hate men. Some of them might, but in reality, the unfortunate part is that a lot of women who say they hate men actually lust after men, and they would rather not have to deal with the consequences of the bad decision making, from one of the things being giving their bodies to the wrong man, without a ring tied or a commitment tied, and then now they have to deal with the consequence of, you know, his bad behavior, or both of their bad behavior, really. And then, if they really did hate men, they wouldn't be pulling up to these single nights at the churches like so heavily and complaining about how the ratios are so bad, because they do want love. A lot of women, most women do love men and realize that they need men around. And by the same token, most men do love women and realize that they need women around. You hear this saying all the time, can't live with them, can't live without them. But it's a saying out of love. I think men also, they lust after women, of course, but they don't want to live with the consequences of their own bad decision making. A lot of men do not know how to interact with women, and when they get rejected, sometimes, I do believe that the way a woman rejects a man can have a significant impact on his character, but men do need to learn how to properly interact with women. And sometimes when men don't get their desired outcome, that ego and that pride and that sense of entitlement take over, and they go down these incel rabbit holes and red pill rabbit holes, and shift the blame onto all the women that are around them, and make claims that all women are liars and hurtful and cheaters and all these other things, when really that's not the case. I think a lot of them are just hurt or scorned because they didn't get a desired outcome from, their own bad choices in their interactions with women. And all of this is because we have very large egos, gigantic egos, that replace accountability with entitlement. So how do we fix this? First thing I will say is that, one, we have to look inside ourselves. Proverbs 23, verse 7 says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." What you believe on the inside is going to shape what you experience on the outside. So if you believe in your heart that all men and women don't take accountability, you will subconsciously go out into the world and look for things that reaffirm your beliefs, thereby attracting people to you who also do not take accountability, because more than likely you are a person who does not take accountability for their actions. And even if you do, if even if you believe that you do, to some extent, this can only really be tested in a relationship scenario. And it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. It can be a business relationship, a platonic relationship. You cannot be a good leader if you don't know how to take accountability. Yeah, you as the man are required, or are looked at to be the leader of that relationship. And so there's a verse in the Bible says, it's Amos 3, verse 3. It says, two cannot walk together except they be agreed, except they are agreed. And this basically means that you will not walk hand in hand, or like even come to attract people who you do not share a belief system with. Meaning that if you believe things to be different, and you believe that, you just sit there and believe that, all the red pill stuff, you're going to attract people who also believe the red pill stuff. Or you believe that, you know all women are cheaters, all women are liars, all men are cheaters, all men are dogs. You're going to attract people who think like you, and you're going to hang around people who think like you. And once you change the way that you think, you're going to start to attract and want to be around different people. Hence, you, e- hence basically being equally yoked. You're not going to walk next to somebody that you don't agree with. The second thing I'll say is to change the way that you see yourself, the things that you believe about yourself, and the things that you believe about other people. Once you begin to change this, how I said with Amos 3:3, two cannot walk together except they be agreed. If you change the things that you believe, then you will begin to attract different people. And the way that you begin to change these things is, one, diving into the Word of God, gaining wisdom for yourself, going to therapy to address any kind of trauma that you may have, dealing with the opposite sex, dealing with like issues of abandonment, dealing with like issues of entitlement, whatever issues that may have sexual assault or sexual issues regarding the other sex that may have shaped your belief. You have to go to therapy, or you have to do work inside yourself to overcome these feelings so that you don't go out and project those things onto other people. That is that is the only way that you're going to come out on top of this. And then you will begin to show love to people, not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. And I promise you, you won't even begin to attract people, or you don't even want to tolerate, what these other people are saying about, this discourse. You're going to start to see your algorithm change. You're going to start to, like, not even want to be entertained by that stuff anymore, because you understand that all these people are just broken, they're traumatized, and they're just going out projecting, and you begin to have empathy for them, right? You begin to have empathy, and you begin to just show a level of compassion, but you also have to show that compassion to yourself, and pretty much enforce boundaries for yourself for what you will and will not tolerate. I think a lot of people who deal with these things sometimes have trouble with boundaries, when it comes to these kinds of people, when it comes to, dealing with people who behave this way, right? We just want to accept love from any and everybody who's willing to give it to us. But if you can find it in your heart to love yourself, you will you will refuse to want to receive love from people who can't even give it, from people who only want to project chaos into the world, and people who only have the capability to project chaos into the world. Um, and it's really up to you. It's really on you what you decide to believe and how you decide to look at the world, so that you can begin to attract something better for yourself. The final thing I would say is to put yourself in a position where you need to take responsibility for something. And that could just mean going to a church and starting a volunteer position, getting into a position of servitude to where you have some actual responsibility. You can get a pet, you can buy a house, get a dog, have a kid, but do it intentionally. Do it intentionally. Don't just be doing it just to do it. Do it intentionally, because the more you teach yourself how to handle responsibility, and that sometimes even the best leaders, the best people who are in these volunteer positions, they are going to make mistakes, right? And they're going to have to be held accountable to those mistakes. So the sooner that you can do that, the sooner that you can, you know, be the kind of person who handles responsibility and accountability for the things that you take on, you can begin to apply those things in your own relationships, right? You can be the difference for yourself. You must be the difference for yourself. So, with all that said, family, I hope that you enjoyed the video. I'm over here trying to drop some bombs, drop some knowledge for you guys today. If you took something from this video, you got some enlightenment, you got something of value, please like the video, please subscribe, please share it to somebody who needs it. If you got somebody in your life who got this like red pill mindset, who got this bum mentality, please, please share the video with them so that we can course correct and renew our minds.